All right, guys, good to see you all. What a way to start the week. This is not what I had on my bingo card for Sunday night, getting a pardon. Seth, I want to start with you. I mean, there's so many things, and I want to break it all down that jump out on this pardon. I almost feel like Biden he was like, Trump's getting all the attention. I got to do something. But the first thing that I think I want to just talk about is, you know, Biden sort of going after saying my son was prosecuted and it was like nothing else. And I'm like, wait a second. You guys in the Democratic Party have two principal things that you pretty much talk about all the time, aside from abortion, actually. One is gun control. We need to have tougher background checks. And two is the rich paying their taxes. Those are the two things that Hunter Biden got caught for. He had a sweetheart deal that he turned down. If he had just gone along with the sweetheart deal, it would have been great. And yet, how do Democrats have any ability to talk about gun control and background checks going forward when here's an example of a prominent Democrat lying on a background check, getting away with it, and the Dems are silent on it?
Yeah, I got to tell you, Sean, I feel like, you know how you used to have those bouncy balls when you were a kid and you throw them against the wall and they kind of, bounce all around. You couldn't really track them. That's my brain this morning. And it's been that since I heard this news. And I'll say that for a multitude of reasons. One, I think about this sometimes as a dad, right? And I'm going, okay, this is my one chance. I may not have many years left. I don't want to die with my kid in prison. Like, this is my chance. I'm going to take it. That's part one. That's the sensitive side of Seth. He doesn't show up very often, but he's here this morning momentarily. The other piece of this is how many people right now are in prison for tax evasion. That's the one that really gets me. And this is the president that wanted to expand the IRS, and his entire Democratic Party was out there talking about paying their fair share when his own son didn't pay his fair share of his taxes and got convicted on it. The gun thing is a little bit of a different thing. I won't get into all of that one, but again, you bring up some great points. But here's where I think there was a missed opportunity. A couple weeks ago, when President Trump and President Biden were in the White House, the Oval Office, broing it out, why not a great chance to sit down and say, all right, let's put this aside. Here's the deal. Biden, you're going to pardon me, and I'm going to pardon Hunter, and we're going to say we're done with this whole going after family members. And what a unifying thing that could have been. I get it might have been politically, rough on the fringes, but I think most of America would have gone, all right, we are going to get along and move on.
Okay, this isn't where I was going. Hilton and Grace. No. But somebody asked me that yesterday. They said, do you think that Biden pardons Trump now because it'll look good? I mean, so let's just hypothetically play that out for a second. First Hilton and then you, Grace. Like, take Seth's principle. Just stick to this for just a second because we've got a lot to dive into. If there was a deal conjured up that said Biden pardons Trump, Trump pardons Hunter, or Biden does everything, do you think that would have gone over okay, Hilton?
I just don't see Biden ever doing that. And if he was going to, I think he would have maybe paired it with Hunter. So maybe it didn't look so, so bipartisan or partisan in that way. I don't know. I just don't see him pardoning Trump. I think he has too much animosity towards Trump right now.
Grace?
I say no only because I think it's not a terrible idea, actually, and it makes sense, but it makes too much sense. And where I think Biden leaves this conversation is we're all talking about this, like, how could he avoid being a liar? Or how could he avoid the word I keep saying is he had a reversal. And I don't think he cares about that. Like, I don't think the Democrat Party, and the Daily Signal put out a great list. And I know you have them on a lot, Sean. They put out a great list of all the things that we've been lied to about over the last 4 years. And to see it laid out like that, it's really staggering. I mean, Biden's okay. Biden's not losing it. We're not going to replace him with Kamala. Okay, we replaced him with Kamala. Inflation is transitory. Afghanistan was a success. The list goes on. And so I think to come to the table looking for a deal like that, you'd have to have a little bit of shame, and you'd have to not want to come to the American people and say, hey, here I am. I'm lying to you again. I'm a big liar. And I don't think he cares about that. I think that's the arrogance level of Joe Biden.
I just literally went and retweeted it because it was a great point. But here's my answer on this question, Seth. I think it makes sense. It's very sort of, Ford and Nixon. Let's let the country move on. I don't think Donald Trump thinks he did anything wrong, and he doesn't want a pardon. He's like, you know what? Your son broke the law. I never did. I'll fight it out in court, blah, blah. I mean, I don't think Donald Trump at his core would want the deal because he'd believe that somehow he would be admitting some guilt that he doesn't believe he has. But Hilton, I want to come back to you on something that Seth said. He said sensitive Seth comes out. Okay, sensitive Sean's here for a second. I have no problem. Any parent, I don't want to speak for every parent, but I will say that I will do anything for my kids. Like I don't have any problem with that. And I agree with that. I think that if Joe Biden should want to say something, and that's not the issue. If he had said this back in June and said, I got to be honest with you, I'm going to let the process play out. But as you know, I've got one son left. I love him to death. And he's been dealing with some stuff. But he lied over and over and over again and said, and made it very clear, I believe in the rule of law. And as late as this November 7th, said to ABC, I have no plans to do it. I wouldn't do it. Nothing has changed. And so to me, suddenly this statement about the Department of Justice that I run coming after my own son makes no sense. And that's the issue. It's not a question of whether or not you're good. And so all this, to me, this is a sleight of hand. Look over here at compassionate Joe caring about his son. That's not the issue. He could have said that for all along. And that's the only time the argument came out is when sentencing came up. He didn't care about sensitive Joe up until, 24 hours ago.
Yeah, well, listen, I think as much bad as Joe Biden has done for the past 4 years and how much we could harp on that, the past, since July, since the debate, I think America their hearts have softened toward Joe just a little bit because of the state he's in. We've all said this. It looks like elder abuse, what's going on with him. And even when he was invited out to the campaigns, it looked like a pity invite to help Kamala. So I think even, again, as bad as it was under the Biden administration, we felt a little sorry for Joe Biden. So I think we would have given him a pass to give a pass to Hunter Biden. But it's just the shamelessness that Biden and the rest of the Dems have showed, where they literally continue to point fingers at the Republican Party for doing the very things that they do. And that's what's made America sick. All the lies and all of the hypocrisy that has been shown by them.
So Seth, he says in this statement that he put out, it is clear that Hunter was treated differently. The charges in his cases came about only after several of my political opponents in Congress instigated them. Nope, not true. It was his Department of Justice the whole time. Then a carefully negotiated plea deal agreed to by the Department of Justice unraveled in the courtroom, only because, just to be clear, they asked him, like Hunter wanted a blanket immunity, not for the crimes he was being charged, with my political opponents in Congress. That has nothing to do with Congress. That was a judge making sure he understood that had the plea deal held, it would have been fair, reasonable resolution. No reasonable person who looks at the facts of Hunter Biden's conclusion can reach any other outcome. That's not true, that he was singled out, and that's wrong. There has to be an effort to break him. He has followed this idea that no one's above the law, right? But here's the question, Seth, that I think is interesting. And this is, again, where everything breaks down and the sleight of hand occurs, right? No one's above the law. But the pardon that Joe Biden gave Hunter was an unequivocal pardon for 11 years. Up until midnight last night, he could have done anything, any crime. And that's the real question. It wasn't he is given a pardon for which he has been charged. It's covering 11 years of behavior. Up until midnight last night, that guy could have run buck wild and done anything, and he would have been okay to do it. That's where I think, again, that the argument that Biden's making just doesn't hold water.
Yeah, Burisma, bribery, the big guy.
Farah.
And by the way, there may be other things we just hadn't figured out yet. Let's be very clear. There may be more things that come out over time. And what this also does is it prevents Hunter from ever telling the truth on anything, because he didn't have to. There's no immunity deal that he has to work through, even post Dad's gone. Dad's gone to the hereafter, right? I mean, it's now, I don't have to say a word. It doesn't matter anymore. I've got this window of time. And so, yeah, the pardon itself was just so broad and so egregious. But here's the thing, and I think you've laid it out well. The people that watch your show are going to now know that. But ABC, NBC, CBS Nightly News isn't doing that. We're not hearing the intricacies of this deal in mainstream media, and the vast majority of the public will have no idea how broad this deal really is and how effectively abusive of the pardon power in most people's minds this would have been, the way that he structured it.
All right, Grace, Curley, Seth brought up the media. I want to play this for you. The folks over at Grabian have put together a 9-minute and 3-second clip. I'm not going to play the whole thing because our show's not that long, but I did post it on social media, and I'll play a portion of it for you now, where commentator after commentator and journalist, and for those of you listening on audio, I'm using air quotes. Those are people who identify as journalists, not actual journalists, said over and over again how great it is that Joe Biden is standing by the rule of law, that Joe Biden isn't like Donald Trump, and here they are over and over again making the case that Biden is so much better than Trump because he believes in the rule of law and allows this jury verdict to stand. So here they all are praising him. A quick snippet of it.
And that he has ruled out pardoning his own son. Contrast that from what we hear from Donald Trump. And again, we have to underline in no uncertain terms, President Biden saying, I will accept the outcome. I will accept what the jury decides here. That's the way our legal system works. And no, I will not pardon my own son if he is convicted.
And the contrast is so clear in terms of decency and principle and transactional guidance in terms of how you view the world.
It is still a good day for the United States that this conviction is a prime example of the way our judicial system is supposed to work.
Grace, I mean, you wonder why they're failing, right? It's CNN, ABC, MSNBC, all of them virtual saying it's so great that Joe Biden's amazing and Donald Trump, abuses. And now they're silent.
Yeah, and I will add in here that when they posted these cuts, a lot of them are on social media. If you really want to laugh, and Sean, your audience can look this up, look at the replies underneath from like Biden stands. They're going, this is what a real president does. This is the kind of, integrity that we need in the White House. Oh, well, none of that really aged well. And something you mentioned, Sean, that I think is so interesting. You brought up the fact that he could have said, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I don't really want to say whether or not, I don't know what I'll do. There was a lot of opportunity there for Joe Biden to level with people. And I think what this administration has done at every step of the way when it comes to a lot of different Biden scandals is that they have a very low expectation for people's ability to understand things or to sympathize. And an example I would give, and Dana Perino first brought this up, and I thought it was a really good point, the whole conversation about Hunter Biden's daughter, who he didn't want to acknowledge, that was another opportunity where if Joe Biden had been a good person about it and said, listen, our family isn't perfect. This is my granddaughter. I don't care what people have to say. It's not a perfect situation, but it is what it is, and we love her very much. It would have been such a great moment where people in this country would have said, yeah, my family's not perfect either, or I know a situation like that. Good for them. Like, not everybody's perfect. This is the same thing. If he had said from the beginning, hey, I can't tell you what I'm going to do. I can't say for sure. He's my son. I love him very much. Just what you said. There's a lot of people out there who are smart enough to go, honestly, I don't know what I would do either. There's a chance I would do the same thing. But because they are so definite in their lying, because they constantly lie in such an egregious fashion, that's where you say, oh, come on. Like, you could have leveled with me. You could have been a little bit honest. And every opportunity, no matter what the scandal is, they go the other way. They mismanage it to the 10th degree.
Hilton, I want to pick up on what Grace was saying, because this is how Politico covered this, right? So the first thing, after writing that, Politico stating unequivocally, by the way, that Biden will not pardon Hunter, then puts out another headline, Biden will pardon Hunter, then puts out another thing that says Republicans pounce. Like it's our fault that he did this. But then here's the second one, that they put out a thing that's saying Republicans say that Biden's a liar. No. We didn't say it. He did it. It's amazing how it's now Republicans' fault, Hilton. And you served in the Trump White House. I mean, I don't understand how this incoming administration led by Caroline Leavitt, can literally sit there and work with an organization like Politico when they literally said Republicans say Biden's a liar. No. We didn't say it. He did.
Yeah, this is reminding me of when the whole jury came out with Laken Riley's killer, and they said the headline was Laken Riley's killer didn't have a chance from the start, or something where it like gave credence to the killer. I mean, I think we've all just gotten used to this. Republicans know if they're being called crazy, that means they're right and they're correct. And the people I felt the worst for today, and I can't believe I'm even saying this, are the surrogates for Joe Biden, is Joe Biden's press secretary, that they were out there, echoing what Joe Biden was saying this whole year, that, Joe Biden wasn't going to give a pass to his son. And now they have to go back and eat their words. But part of me feels like, they're just so used to covering up for the lies for Joe Biden. And then they also know that the media is going to give them a pass, that this isn't difficult for them. But if the shoe was on the other foot, if this was Donald Trump doing this and Republicans were having to own what he was saying, we would be crucified right now.
Seth, I mean, look, to Hilton's point, there's no accountability. They're blaming Republicans for Biden's lies, right? Then Biden gets on a plane last night for Africa. Corinne Jean-Pierre, just so everyone understands, isn't briefing. She's on the plane with him and John Kirby, her babysitter, and she gets to go to the back of the plane where there are 13 press representatives. But remember, of those 13, one's a photographer, one's a camera person, one's a radio. So it's not like a full briefing. There's literally like 3 or 4 reporters that will ask you a question. And they've literally got on a plane and got out of town. And that's the beauty of this. They will face no accountability for this whatsoever. To Hilton's point, I mean, I remember being eviscerated for things that when President Trump changed his mind, that I was somehow a liar. Corinne Jean-Pierre, in my guess, will face no consequences for this. Not that anyone ever thought that she was good at her job to begin with, but the bottom line is that they're going to give her a pass.
Well, they're going to give her a pass, and I think I don't know for sure, but I think they made sure that Peter Doocy got the wrong takeoff time for the jet. He missed the flight just in case, because he's not the only one that will sit there and say, "Well, wait a minute, you said this, you said this, you said this," and she did. I mean, check the tape. We can go back and count how many times she said he will not pardon Hunter Biden over and over and over again, and. Again, I do think that she's going to lean into this as a father. This is a sensitive moment. This is a difficult time. And, this is and again, as I said at the top, ABC, NBC, CBS nightly news, the 30-minute windows that Americans that aren't really inside of what's going on a daily basis pay attention to, they're going to get what is fed to them, which is a sensitive dad who felt like his son was being mistreated because he was the real target and the only person they could get to was his son. And I thought, and maybe it was Grace or Hilton that made the comment, I do think throughout this whole event, and I even found myself as a father over the last 4 years, thinking about what a dad might go through that has a son that has addiction issues and problems and all of that. And had he leaned into that a little bit more, I think he did win over the American people from time to time, because I know people who are great people that just have kids that went down the wrong track, and he could have leaned into that and owned that, and that will certainly, I think.
But Mark Halpert on the morning meeting that I do brought up a good point. You knew this when you ran. You had a son that was an addict who had fallen down several times on his road to recovery, and yet you chose to run and put him in the spotlight and his crimes in the spotlight. He made that choice as a dad. And that was a bad place to put his family. You know that that's going to come up. I mean, if you're a dad, I mean, you can't.
Grace is chomping at the bit.
Yeah,
I got something, but go ahead, Grace.
Because what it reminds me of is when Hunter Biden was put in this position in Burisma. I always thought to myself, if you're a father, because we all want to talk about, if it was my son, if it was my child, and I think there's legitimacy to that. But when you think about if you had a child and you knew that they were struggling, you knew they had addiction, and they said to you, "Hey, I got this job to be the head of Burisma," most parents, I don't care how much money your kid was offered, I don't care how much it was going to enrich your family, most parents would say, "You're not taking that job. You're going to rehab, or you're coming home, or you're getting your life together. You're not doing that. Like this is bad news. This is bad news." But I do think there were a lot of times throughout the last few decades where Joe Biden and I don't say this lightly because I know it's a big accusation, but Joe Biden was willing to have Hunter put himself in these positions because it was beneficial to the Biden family. And that's a really lousy thing to say, but that's where the evidence leads us. Is there have been plenty of times where I think a responsible parent would have said, this is not the right move. This is not what you want to be doing. You are not qualified for this position. This is dangerous. You know, you're putting us all in jeopardy. He didn't do that.
Well,
But
no.
Sean,
Also, by the
there's
way,
a-
not only do you not have experience, but you're basically getting paid to grift off of me. You're putting me in a bad spot unless you're actually in on the deal,
But
right?
let's be clear. Again, I think we're thinking like we would think. This is someone who has been in the public eye, and the narcissism is at a whole new level, and has lived by the theory, as do many politicians. By the way, there's a lot of politicians that get into politics, and you go, boy, with those skeletons in those closets, why would they ever do that? Why would they put their families through that? Because they are narcissistic enough to think that we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but I'm going for it. I think that was a big part of this too, was why would you run for president knowing you got your son in this situation? You know what? We'll cross that bridge when we get there. I'm going for the big job, and we'll just deal with it, and we'll have a whole army and a media that is willing to carry our water.
Okay, Hilton, here's my question. Part of the reason I think he had a blanket 11-year immunity is because there's a lot more. And we all know it from what James Comer and the House have done, other people have unearthed. I mean, just, I'm thinking of the books that have been written about Biden, Inc., et cetera, right? I wonder what else is coming down the pike. Does he pardon himself? Does he pardon brother Jim? Does he pardon other Biden family members? Like, there's more, in my opinion, that's going to happen. Like, this was tip of the iceberg, maybe to get in front of some of the sentencing that was coming down in the next couple of weeks. But I have a feeling that we have not heard the last of Biden family members getting pardoned.
I mean, you're probably correct. If Biden just pardons his whole family, I mean, what a way to exit American politics. I mean, they'll just go down in history for that. I almost kind of wish that happens because, like, holy crap. But I mean, I think the Bidens knew they had this all in the bag before Joe Biden even became president. The whole Hunter Biden laptop story came out, and it was completely taken down everywhere. And even the person who posted it, they got kicked off Twitter. And then you had the intelligence community coming out saying this is Russian disinformation. Biden's knew from the get-go that they were going to get covered by the media, they were going to get covered by people in the government, and that they weren't going to have a hard time sailing through this. So, I mean, I don't think the Bidens have any remorse. I don't think they have, again, they're shameless about this. And so they're going to do whatever they can to cover themselves as they exit the White House.
Grace, I have an angle that I want to throw at you. And so just hear me out on this because it riffs off of what I asked Hilton. But there's a woman named Margaret Love who served as the Department of Justice's pardon attorney from 1990 to 1997. And she told a reporter named Betsy Woodruff Swan that, quote, this, I have never seen language like this in a pardon document, with the exception of the Nixon pardon. Even the broadest Trump pardons were specific as to what was being pardoned. So we know this decision was made over the weekend and it was crafted. Here's what my theory is. I believe that once Trump announced Kash Patel as FBI director, they said, I think if Kash Patel becomes FBI director, we're screwed. Make it a blanket 11-year pardon, covering everything so that Kash Patel can't go in there and get him.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And I think what lends credence to your theory, Sean, is the response to Kash Patel and the utter meltdowns from John Bolton and the Never Trumpers. And really anyone, when I think deep state and I think swamp, the people I look up, all of those people had an issue with Kash Patel. Kash Patel has said that he wants to, I think, turn the FBI, the Hoover building, into like a museum for the swamp and then send all those agents out as cops onto the street to solve real crime. So I don't think there's really a question. But the funny thing about it is that they're so afraid of retribution and Kash Patel coming in and kind of heading up Trump's reckoning for all of these people. And we all know this, but there's a really distinct difference between justice and retribution. And if the investigators that investigated Trump were doing the wrong thing, if they were breaking the law, if they were trying to weaponize the Justice Department, they deserve to be investigated. And so I have no question that the appointment of Kash Patel has frightened the Biden family. And it kind of goes back to what you had said earlier in this episode, where you said, this is what we know of. Like this is
Right.
This is for the stuff we think we know. Who knows how, if you had the right people in that building, if you had the right people in an administration, and you had people who were determined to find out the truth, what they would uncover about Hunter Biden. I think we just know like the tip of the iceberg stuff.
Seth, I think one of the things that's interesting about this Kash Patel for FBI director nomination, the media went back to their tried and true description, questioning his qualifications. So let's look at Kash Patel's qualifications. He was deputy director of the Director of National Intelligence Office, chief of staff of the Department of Defense. He was a senior director on the National Security Council and a public defender at the Department of Justice. Gosh, I think that sounds like somebody who's qualified. To me, that's their dog whistle, their code word for when we don't like you or we're worried about you, we talk about qualifications, because all of those things make it seem like somebody who actually has the qualifications to do the job.
Yeah, and somebody's going to have to explain to me at some point why Pothole Pete was qualified to run the Department of Transportation. I mean, that has been a
66
nightmare.
buses in South Bend, Indiana, by the way.
Yeah, and I think the litmus test for those that are speaking out on all of these appointees and their lack of qualification is they haven't been in politics. And that seems to be the number one criteria in Democrats' minds, and those that are calling, whether they're journalists, I'll use your air quotes for the listeners too, or not, as to the credibility of these people is they can't be politically persuaded because we don't know, because they haven't been in politics long enough. As opposed to what Trump is doing is saying, I want people that have actually been on the ground.
Yep.
I want people that actually understand the technical aspects of operational efficiency and effectiveness to get these things, which, by the way, a business leader would do, because that's what this is. A really big business is understanding, I want operational efficiency and effectiveness, and I'm going to put the right people in the place to get that job done. I don't care how many times they've been on the Sunday morning talk shows.
Hilton, that's the thing. I think the bottom line is this idea that people are going to go in and challenge the status quo. They're not from the same, pedigree as all these other people who've come in and kicked the can down the road and done the same thing over and over again. They're actually going to come in and enact change. That's what they're worried about more than anything else. And that's why I think this code word about qualifications is such a joke, because to Seth's point, tell me how Dennis McDonough was qualified to lead the Department of Veterans Affairs. He's never served in the military, never ran a VSO, never gave out a home loan or health care, which is what the VA largely does. How Pothole Pete, who oversaw 66 buses in South Bend, Indiana, how he was qualified to lead the Department of Transportation, every roadway, highway, airway. And yet we question Kash Patel's qualification after serving at DNI, DOJ, NSC. I mean, it doesn't pass the laugh test, but that's what the media wants to do, to gaslight us.
Or what about that cross-dressing, luggage stealing, whatever he or she was, guy at the energy department handling nuclear matters? No one ever called him out, especially when we had him on camera stealing other people's luggage, and it was from a minority woman on top of that. Listen, I see Donald Trump. This might be kind of weird to say, but I feel like Donald Trump is following in his own footsteps. He's picking people that are not like the DC verified, that maybe don't have all the credentials. Some of them definitely do, but he wants people who are the go-getters, who actually do what they say they're going to do, because we all know DC is just full of talkers, that they come here and say, I'm gonna change or drain the swamp, and I'm gonna do XYZ to make our world a better place. And they come here and they and sit in their cushy offices, and they don't want to rock the boat because that's what everyone is told to do. So he's really looking for the people who have the chutzpah to actually get things done and have the stomach to go against the status quo.
Yeah, Grace, the last thing I want to touch on is everybody freaked out. And this is kind of on the same plane. When Donald Trump sent that truth out and said, hey, I'm going to levy tariffs on China, Mexico, and Canada day one because fentanyl's coming into our borders. I want to protect the American people. Everyone, oh my God, do you know what that's going to do to our economy? And do you know what it actually did? The president of Mexico called Donald Trump right away and said, Mr. President, what do we need to do to work together? And Justin Trudeau basically got on a plane and flew his butt down to Mar-a-Lago and ended up having Thanksgiving with Donald Trump to kiss his butt and to figure it out. Like, everyone freaks out. And at the end of the day, Donald Trump, this goes back to the art of the deal. He understands how to bring these guys to the table to get what he wants.
Yeah, and to Hilton's point, he's done it before. So people have the first 4 years, they know he's not bluffing. They know that he is really a honey badger and he's not afraid to mess with anybody. But the other part of this conversation about how he's bringing people in and they're sitting down with him, and you mentioned Mexico and these tariffs, the part of that really cracked me up was, Chuck Todd and, Sean, I'm like obsessed with this nonsense and listening to these people. They all of a sudden started turning on, their cameras to tell people guacamole is going to be really expensive. I don't know if you all understand. Avocados are going to be expensive. And I called up a friend of mine and I said, so I just want to get this clear. This is where we've gone in the last couple of weeks. We've gone from he's going to come in, he's going to put us in internment camps, and he's going to throw away the key. And, he's going to be Hitler. He's going to burn everything down. And that is slowly dissipated. And now we're at the point of, well, you might regret your choice with Donald Trump because guacamole is going to be really expensive. And I'm thinking, how things have changed in just a couple of days. Like everything they're trying to fearmonger about now compared to the boy who cried wolf telling us he was going to be Mussolini feels kind of like light stuff compared to what we were dealing with before. And it just highlights the phoniness of these people and how
But also the bottom line is that he's getting change. He's keeping our country. It's not, you might pay more for a guacamole in the short term, but there'll be less fentanyl in your community. Gosh, maybe that's a decent trade-off.
I think a lot of people would take that trade-off.
I'll take that deal.
Hey, Sean, real quick on this tariff thing. Again, my country is worth it for me. And second of all, Abraham Lincoln was the one that came out originally and said, give me a strong protective tariff and I'll give you the strongest nation on the face of the earth. That was Abraham Lincoln. And so tariffs are nothing new, and they are a huge tool economically and diplomatically and from a national security perspective to get done what you need to get done.
And it's working. These guys... Take a chill pill, folks. Anyway, Seth Denson, Hilton Beckham, Grace Curley, always great to kick off the week with you guys. I appreciate it, and I'll see you all soon.
Thanks, Sean.
You bet.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.